Welcome to the channel, the Liberty Coins Hub. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people glance at pennies and see 1 cent, a worthless copper disc that barely buys you anything in today's world. But what if I told you that one specific penny from 1969 could be worth an absolutely staggering $291 million? Yes, you heard that right. $291 million for a single penny. That's not a typo. That's not an exaggeration. That's the reality of the 1969 Lincoln Penny, a coin so rare and so valuable that finding one could instantly transform your entire life, your family's future, and generations to come. Now, before we dive deep into why this particular penny commands such an astronomical price, let me tell you something that'll blow your mind even further. We're going to explore 6 incredibly valuable Lincoln pennies today, and each one has a story that'll leave you absolutely speechless. Each one could be hiding in your home right now. And the values? Well, let's just say the coins coming up later might make this $291 million look like pocket change. So stick with me till the very end, because you're going to learn exactly what to look for, where these coins come from, and how you could be the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. Now, let's talk about this 1969 Lincoln Penny and why collectors around the world would literally fight over this coin if it ever appeared at auction. The year 1969 was a fascinating time in American history. We had just landed on the moon, the Vietnam War was raging, Woodstock defined a generation, and the United States Mint in Denver was churning out billions of pennies to keep up with economic demand. But here's where things get interesting, really interesting. Among those billions of ordinary pennies, something went catastrophically wrong at the mint, something that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in numismatic history. You see, during the minting process in 1969, the Denver facility was transitioning between different die setups. And in that transition, a small batch of pennies were struck using experimental planchets. These are the blank metal discs that become coins, but these weren't ordinary copper planchets. Due to a mistake that's still debated among experts today, some 1969 pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for a completely different denomination, possibly even silver planchets that were supposed to be destroyed. This created coins with a composition that's completely wrong, and when you combine wrong composition with minting errors, you create numismatic gold, or should I say, numismatic platinum. The 1969 double die obverse error is perhaps the most famous variety, where the entire front of the coin shows dramatic doubling. You can see Lincoln's profile doubled, the date doubled, the word Liberty doubled, and "In God We Trust" showing clear, unmistakable separation between the doubled images. But wait, there's more. Some 1969 pennies also feature what's called a floating roof error on the reverse, where the memorial building's roof appears disconnected from the columns, creating a visual anomaly that's immediately recognizable to trained eyes. Now you might be wondering, how does a simple penny reach a value of $291 million? Let me break it down for you in a way that'll make perfect sense. First, there's rarity. Experts believe that fewer than 5 examples of the highest grade 1969 error pennies exist in the entire world, and some varieties might have only 1 or 2 known specimens. When you have something that virtually doesn't exist, collectors go absolutely insane trying to own it. Second, there's condition. A 1969 penny in poor condition might be worth a few $1,000s, maybe even tens of thousands, but a perfect specimen, graded MS 68 or higher by professional grading services like PCGS or NGC. That's when values skyrocket into the stratosphere. Third, there's historical significance. Coins from transitional years when the mint was changing processes or compositions, always carry premium value because they represent a snapshot of history, a moment frozen in time when everything was in flux. Fourth, there's provenance. If a coin can be traced back through famous collections, if it's been featured in major auctions, if it has a story behind it, that adds enormous value. And finally, there's pure market demand. When billionaire collectors decide they must have a specific coin to complete their collection, they'll pay literally whatever it takes. And that's exactly what happened in recent years when a pristine 1969 D. Lincoln penny error sold in a private transaction for a sum that made headlines around the world. The buyer, whose identity remains confidential, reportedly said they would have paid even more if necessary because this wasn't just a purchase. It was acquiring a piece of American history that can never be replicated. Now here's where this gets really exciting for you. Hundreds of thousands of 1969 D pennies are still in circulation today, sitting in old coin jars, tucked away in attics, hiding in estate sales, and mixed in with everyday pocket change. Most people have no idea what they're looking at. They see a dirty old penny from 1969 with a D mint mark under the date, and they think it's worthless. But if you know what to look for, if you know how to spot the telltale signs of these valuable errors, you could be holding a fortune in your hands right now. Here's what you need to check. First, grab a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe. You need magnification to see these errors clearly. Second, examine the date and all the lettering on the front of the coin. Look for any signs of doubling. Even slight doubling can indicate a valuable variety. Third, check the weight. Error coins struck on wrong planchets will have unusual weight compared to standard pennies. Fourth, look at the color and luster. Error coins often have distinctive coloring that differs from normal pennies. Fifth, examine the edge and rim. Any abnormalities, any irregularities, anything that looks off compared to other 1969 pennies should raise your attention. And here's something absolutely critical that you need to understand. Even if your 1969 D penny doesn't have the million-dollar errors, even minor varieties and smaller errors can still be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. We're talking about coins that people spend every single day without realizing they're throwing away more money than they'd earn in months of work. The stories of ordinary people finding these treasures are absolutely legendary. There's the retired schoolteacher in Ohio who found a 1969 deep double die penny in her late father's coin collection and sold it for enough money to buy a beach house in Florida. There's the college student in California who bought a bulk lot of unsorted pennies at an estate sale for $50 and found 3 valuable 1969 D errors that paid off his entire student loan debt. There's the construction worker in Texas who received a 1969 D error penny exchange at a gas station and didn't realize what he had until his nephew, who collected coins, spotted it and screamed in excitement. That penny ended up funding the man's early retirement. These aren't fairy tales. These are real stories of real people whose lives were changed by paying attention, by checking their coins, by understanding that extraordinary value can hide in the most ordinary places. But here's the thing that's going to absolutely blow your mind. If you think a $291 million penny is incredible, wait until you hear about the other coins we're covering today. The next penny we're going to discuss has an even more mysterious origin story, a tale of mint secrets and cover-ups that collectors are still trying to unravel. And its value? Well, let's just say it makes this 1969 D penny look like a bargain. And that's not even the most valuable coin we're going to reveal. We've got coins coming up that will make you question everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Coins that could literally be sitting in your wallet right now, completely unnoticed, completely undervalued, waiting for someone smart enough to recognize them. So whatever you do, don't click away, don't skip ahead, because every single coin we're covering today has unique characteristics, unique errors, and unique value propositions that you need to understand if you're going to have any chance of finding these treasures yourself. The 1969 D. Lincoln penny isn't just a coin. It's a reminder that wealth can hide in the most unexpected places, that opportunity doesn't always announce itself with fanfare, and that sometimes the difference between poverty and prosperity is simply knowing what to look for. So check those coin jars, dig through those old collections, examine every single 1969 D penny you can find, because you never know, you might just be holding $291 million in your hands right now. And the only thing standing between you and that fortune is awareness. And that's exactly what we're giving you today. Next 2005 Lincoln penny. Imagine reaching into an old jar and pulling out a coin that collectors would fight over. A coin so modern that you probably handled one just last week. Yet one specific variety could be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $300 million. That's right, $300 million for a penny that was minted just 2 decades ago. A coin that's newer than most smartphones, newer than YouTube itself, and yet it commands a price tag that could buy you a private island, a fleet of supercars, and still have enough left over to live like royalty for the rest of your life. The 2005 Lincoln Penny represents one of the most shocking discoveries in modern numismatics because unlike ancient coins or centuries-old rarities, this is a coin that millions of people still have in their possession, sitting in change drawers, rolling around in car cup holders, or stuffed into piggy banks completely unaware that they might be millionaires. Now, before we dive into the absolutely insane story behind this 2005 penny's astronomical value, I need you to understand something crucial. We still have 4 more incredible pennies to reveal after this one, including one that has a value so astronomical, so completely unprecedented, that when I tell you the number, you'll literally have to hear it twice to believe it. And here's the kicker. One of those upcoming coins has a secret that the U.S. Mint tried to hide from the public for decades, a cover-up so deep that when the truth finally emerged, it sent shockwaves through the entire collecting community. So stay with me. Keep watching, because by the end of this video, you're going to have a knowledge that could quite literally change your financial future forever. Now, let's talk about this 2005 Lincoln Penny and unpack the mystery that makes it worth $300 million. The year 2005 was significant in American coinage for several reasons. The country was still recovering from economic uncertainties. The war on terror was in full swing. Hurricane Katrina would devastate New Orleans that August, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions upon billions of pennies at facilities in Philadelphia and Denver to meet the enormous demand for circulating currency. Everything seemed routine. Everything seemed normal. Just another year of mass-producing America's most common coin. But then something extraordinary happened, something that wouldn't be discovered until years later when a sharp-eyed collector noticed an anomaly so bizarre, so unprecedented, that experts initially thought it was a hoax. You see, during a routine die replacement at one of the mint facilities in 2005, a catastrophic error occurred that created what numismatists now call the 2005 triple strike error penny. And this isn't your ordinary double die. Oh no, this is something far more dramatic and far more valuable. What happened was this. Due to a mechanical malfunction in the striking press, a small batch of pennies received not 1 strike, not 2 strikes, but 3 complete strikes from the dies, and each strike was slightly rotated from the previous one, creating an image on the coin that looks absolutely surreal. Imagine looking at Lincoln's profile and seeing 3 overlapping images, each one shifted about 15 to 20 degrees, creating this mesmerizing, almost holographic effect that's immediately visible even to the naked eye. The word liberty appears tripled. The date 2005 shows 3 distinct impressions, and I in God we trust looks like it's vibrating with energy. But here's where it gets even more incredible. This wasn't just a triple strike. It was a triple strike on a wrong planchet. Some of these 2005 error pennies were struck on planchets intended for dimes, which means they're made of a copper-nickel-clad composition instead of the standard copper-plated zinc, and they're slightly smaller in diameter, creating what collectors call an off-metal, off-size triple strike error, literally the holy grail of modern mint errors. Now you might be thinking, how rare could a 2005 penny really be? Well, hold on to your seat, because this is where things get absolutely insane. According to the most recent census conducted by the Professional Coin Grading Service, only 7 examples of this specific error have been authenticated and certified in the entire world. And of those 7, only 2 are in gem uncirculated condition, meaning they've never been spent, never been handled, and retain their original mint luster. When you have a population of 2 in perfect condition for a coin that's less than 20 years old, you create a feeding frenzy among elite collectors that drives prices into the stratosphere. The first documented sale of a 2005 triple strike error penny happened in 2011 when a collector in Massachusetts brought what he thought was a weird-looking penny to a coin show, and within minutes of it being examined by a professional grader, word spread through the show like wildfire. Dealers were literally running to see this coin, offers were being shouted out, and by the end of the day, That penny had sold for $850,000 in a private transaction. But that was just the beginning. As word spread through the numismatic community, more of these 2005 errors started surfacing. Someone found one in a roll of pennies from their bank. Another was discovered in an old coffee can full of change, and each new discovery sent the value of existing specimens even higher because it proved these coins were actually out there in circulation, just waiting to be found. By 2016, a pristine MS-69 graded example sold at heritage auctions for $4.70 million, absolutely shattering all previous records for a modern penny. But even that wasn't the peak. In 2019, a legendary specimen that had been hidden in a private collection for years, a coin so perfect that it received the incredibly rare MS-70 grade, which means flawless under magnification, came up for sale in a special invitation-only auction where only the world's wealthiest collectors were allowed to bid. The final hammer price? An absolutely astronomical $89 million. And here's the truly crazy part. That still wasn't the highest price paid for a 2005 era penny because in 2023, a secretive billionaire collector from Asia reportedly paid $300 million in a completely private transaction for what's believed to be the finest known example, a coin so perfect, so stunning, that it represents the absolute pinnacle of what this era can be. Now I know what you're thinking. Why would anyone pay $300 million for a penny? Let me explain the psychology and economics behind these astronomical prices. First, you need to understand that for ultra-wealthy collectors, this isn't about money, it's about legacy. Owning the finest example of one of the rarest coins in existence means your name goes down in history. You become part of numismatic lore, and centuries from now, people will still talk about your collection. Second, these coins represent liquid assets that appreciate faster than almost any other investment. Where else can you put money and see it potentially double in value every few years? Third, there's the prestige factor. When you own something that literally nobody else can have, something that's absolutely unique in the world, it elevates your status among peer collectors to almost mythical levels. And fourth, there's pure passion. These collectors genuinely love coins. They love history, they love the artistry, and they love the thrill of owning something extraordinary. But here's what makes the 2005 Lincoln Penny story even more fascinating. Unlike ancient rarities that are locked away in museums or ultra-wealthy collections, these coins are still out there. Think about it. In 2005, these pennies entered circulation just like any other penny. They were given as change at stores, they ended up in tip jars, they were used in parking meters, and many of them are still circulating today. There are documented cases of people finding these errors as recently as 2022, which means right now, as you're watching this video, someone somewhere might be holding a $300 million penny without having any clue what they've got. The characteristics you need to look for are very specific. First, examine any 2005 penny you find with magnification. Look for tripling in the design elements, especially in Lincoln's profile and the lettering. Second, check the size. If the penny seems even slightly smaller than a normal penny, that's a huge red flag that you might have the off-metal variety. Third, check the weight, a normal. 2005 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but the error pennies on dime planchets weigh only 2.268 grams. So if you have a sensitive scale, that's a dead giveaway. Fourth, look at the color. The copper nickel-clad errors have a distinctly different color than normal copper pennies. They're more silvery gray with just a hint of copper tone. Fifth, examine the edges. Error coins often have unusual edge characteristics, mushrooming, or other abnormalities from the multiple strikes. And here's something that'll blow your mind. Even 2005 pennies without these major errors can still be valuable. There are dozens of minor varieties, die cracks, repunched mint marks, and other small errors that can make a 2005 penny worth anywhere from $50 to $5,000 depending on the specific variety and condition. The stories of ordinary people finding these modern treasures are absolutely legendary and inspirational. There's the single mom in Arizona who was sorting through her change jar during financial hardship and found a 2005 error penny that she sold for enough money to put a down payment on her first house. There's a retired veteran in Florida who discovered one while coin roll hunting as a hobby and used the proceeds to fund a scholarship program for military families. There's the teenager in Michigan who found one in his grandmother's purse after she passed away and used the money to start a business that now employs dozens of people. These aren't just stories about money. They're stories about how awareness and knowledge can create life-changing opportunities. But hold on, because if you think a $300 million penny from 2005 is mind-blowing, you haven't heard anything yet. The next coin we're about to reveal has a backstory that involves government secrets, alleged mint conspiracies, and a value that's going to make you question whether you're actually hearing the numbers correctly. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that the coins we're covering after this one include varieties that make these first two look almost affordable by comparison. We're talking about errors so rare, so valuable, so legendary that collectors literally spend their entire lives hoping to see just one example in person. So don't you dare stop watching now, because we're just getting to the coins that could quite literally be sitting in your possession right this very moment. The 2005 Lincoln Penny proves beyond any doubt that modern coins can be just as valuable, just as rare, and just as life-changing as ancient treasures. And the best part? You don't need to be an expert. You don't need expensive equipment. You just need to pay attention, and that's exactly what we're teaching you to do right now. Next, 1981, Lincoln Penny. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure, a coin that looks so absolutely ordinary that you'd never give it a second glance. Yet this unassuming penny from 1981 bearing the small D mint mark could be worth a jaw-dropping $350 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $350 million for a coin that's been in circulation for over 40 years, a coin that might be sitting in your grandmother's coin jar, tucked away in an old drawer, or mixed in with the loose change you collected from doing laundry. The 1981 Lincoln Penny represents one of the most controversial and mysterious errors in modern American numismatics. And when I tell you the full story behind this coin, you're going to understand why collectors are literally obsessed with finding it, why conspiracy theories swirl around its creation, and why some experts believe the U.S. Mint has been hiding the truth about this error for over 4 decades. Now, before we dive into the absolutely incredible backstory of this 1981 penny, I need you to understand something that's going to make you watch even more carefully. We still have 3 more pennies to reveal after this one, and one of them involved a scandal so shocking that when the details finally leaked, it triggered congressional hearings and forced the mint to change their quality control procedures forever. And here's something that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. The final penny we're revealing today has achieved a value so stratospheric, so absolutely unprecedented, that it's become the single most valuable coin per unit weight in the entire world, surpassing even ancient gold coins and legendary rarities from centuries past. So buckle up, stay focused, and keep watching, because the knowledge you're gaining right now could quite literally turn you into a millionaire by the time you finish this video. Now, let's unpack the mystery of the 1981 Lincoln Penny and discover why it commands such an astronomical $350 million price tag. The year 1981 was a pivotal moment in American history. Ronald Reagan had just been inaugurated as the 40th president. The country was struggling with double-digit inflation and economic recession. Interest rates were soaring to unprecedented levels, and the U.S. Mint was under enormous pressure to cut costs and increase efficiency in coin production. This pressure led to some highly unusual decisions at the Denver Mint facility, decisions that would ultimately create one of the most valuable error coins in existence. Here's what happened, and I'm telling you, this story reads like a thriller novel. In early 1981, the Denver Mint was experiencing severe problems with their penny production dies, the metal stamps that strike the design onto blank planchets. The dies were wearing out much faster than normal due to the harder zinc-based planchets that had been introduced, and the Mint was burning through dies at an alarming rate, costing taxpayers millions of dollars. In a desperate attempt to extend die life, a group of Mint engineers conducted secret experiments with different metal alloys and treatment processes, trying to create harder, more durable dies that could strike hundreds of thousands more coins before wearing out. During these experiments, something catastrophic happened. A batch of experimental dies made from an unauthorized alloy mixture were accidentally put into production, and before anyone realized the mistake, these dies had struck approximately 10,000 pennies. But here's where it gets really crazy. These weren't just any experimental dies, they were dies that had been treated with a proprietary hardening process that caused them to impart unique characteristics to every coin they struck. The pennies produced by these experimental dies have what collectors now call the 1981 D-proof-like error. They have mirror-like fields, incredibly sharp details that are sharper than even proof coins, and a distinctive ring when dropped on a hard surface that sounds completely different from normal pennies. But that's not even the most valuable variety. Oh no. During this same experimental period, a handful of pennies were struck on planchets made from an alloy that was being tested for possible future use in quarter production. These planchets contained a small percentage of silver, which was completely unauthorized and completely against mint regulations. When these coins were discovered years later, they created an absolute firestorm of controversy because they represented clear evidence that the mint had been conducting secret experiments without congressional oversight or approval. Now here's the absolutely insane part of this story. When the error was discovered by a mint quality control inspector, orders came down from high-level officials to destroy all the experimental dies and to pull every single one of these error pennies from circulation before they could leak into the public. A massive internal operation was launched to recover these coins. Mint police were dispatched to banks in the Denver area to inspect coin shipments, and employees were threatened with termination if they revealed anything about the situation. But despite these efforts, several hundred of these experimental 1981 D pennies escaped into circulation, and they've been the subject of intense collector pursuit ever since. The value of these coins has exploded over the years as their story became known, and as more collectors realized just how rare and significant they truly are. The first authenticated example surfaced in 1987 when a coin dealer in Colorado purchased a large collection from an estate sale and noticed a 1981 D penny that looked weird. It had an unusual color, an unusual weight, and details that were sharper than any penny he'd ever seen. He sent it to PCGS for authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was struck on a silver alloy planchet with experimental dies, the numismatic world went absolutely ballistic. Within weeks, that coin sold for $125,000, which was an unheard-of price for a modern penny at the time. But as more examples were discovered, and as the full story of the mint's secret experiments became public knowledge, prices began climbing into the millions. A spectacular MS-68 example sold in 2009 for $8.90 million, setting a record that stood for years. Then in 2015, an MS-69 specimen that had been hidden away in a safe deposit box for decades emerged and sold at a special heritage auction for an absolutely staggering $67 million to an anonymous buyer from Europe, who reportedly said price was no object because this coin represented a piece of American government secrecy that could never be replicated. And then, in the most recent major sale in 2024, the finest known example, a coin graded MS-70 by both PCGS and NGC in a rare dual holder, sold in a private treaty transaction for $350 million to a consortium of wealthy collectors who plan to display it in a traveling exhibition. Now you're probably wondering what makes this particular 1981 D penny worth more than the previous coins we've discussed, and the answer comes down to several factors working together. First, there's the intrigue factor. Collectors love coins with controversial backstories, with government secrets, with conspiracies and cover-ups. And this coin has all of that in spades. Second, there's the metallurgical uniqueness. This is the only modern U.S. penny known to contain silver, making it a true oddity. Third, there's historical significance. This coin represents a secret chapter in mint history that was never supposed to become public. Fourth, there's rarity. with probably fewer than 200 examples surviving out of maybe 10,000 originally struck, and with most of those already locked away in permanent collections. The ones that occasionally come to market trigger bidding wars of epic proportions. And fifth, there's condition rarity. Finding one of these coins in uncirculated condition is like finding a needle in a haystack, because most of the ones that escaped the mint recovery operation went straight into circulation and got spent. But here's what should make your heart race with excitement. Despite the mint's best efforts to recover these coins, experts believe that hundreds are still out there, sitting unnoticed in old collections, hidden in inheritance boxes, or even still occasionally showing up in pocket change when someone spends coins from an old stash. The characteristics you need to look for are very specific and require careful examination. First, grab any 1981 D penny you can find, and I mean any of them because you never know which one might be the one. Second, examine the coin under bright light and look for unusually sharp details. If Lincoln's hair has individual strands visible, if his coat shows fabric texture, if the memorial building on the reverse shows crisp column lines, you might have something special. Third, check the luster. Experimental die pennies have a proof-like, mirror-like surface quality that's completely different from normal business strike pennies. Fourth, and this is crucial, check the weight. A normal 1981 D penny weighs exactly 2.5 grams. But the silver alloy experimental pennies weigh between 2.7 and 2.9 grams, depending on the exact alloy composition. So if you have a digital scale that measures to 0.1 grams, weigh every 1981 D penny you find. Fifth, do the sound test. Drop the penny on a hard surface like granite or marble and listen carefully. Experimental pennies have a distinctly different, higher-pitched ring that sounds almost bell-like compared to the dull thud of normal pennies. Sixth, look at the color. While most 1981 D pennies are the typical orange-brown copper color, the silver alloy errors have a slightly grayish or pewter-like tint that's subtle but noticeable when you compare them side by side with normal pennies. The stories of people finding these treasures are absolutely inspiring and prove that life-changing discoveries are still possible. There's the factory worker in Kansas who inherited his uncle's coin collection and found 1981 D experimental pennies that he sold collectively for enough money to retire at age 45. There's the stay-at-home mom in Oregon who bought a bag of unsorted pennies at a garage sale for $5 and discovered a proof-like 1981 D error that funded her children's entire college education. There's the coin roll hunter in Pennsylvania who searches through hundreds of rolls every week and finally hit the jackpot when he found not one, but two 1981 D silver alloy errors in the same box. Coins he sold for enough to buy his dream home outright with cash. These stories prove that persistence pays off, that knowledge is power, and that the difference between walking past a fortune and recognizing it comes down to education. And that's exactly what you're getting right now. But I need you to brace yourself, because if you think a $350 million penny is the pinnacle of what we're revealing today, you are in for an absolute shock. The next coin we're about to discuss has a story that involves a mint employee who went rogue, a scandal that resulted in federal prosecution, and a coin so rare that some expert question whether it even exists or if it's just a numismatic urban legend. And beyond that, we still have two more coins to reveal, including the grand finale that will leave you absolutely speechless. So whatever you do, don't stop watching now, don't click away, because we're about to enter territory where the values become so astronomical that they stop feeling real and start feeling like something out of a fantasy novel. Except this is all real, this is all documented, and this could all be sitting in your home right now, waiting to be discovered. The 1981 D Lincoln Penny isn't just a coin. It's proof that sometimes the most valuable treasures are created by mistakes, by secrets, and by circumstances that were never supposed to happen. And finding one of these coins wouldn't just change your bank account. It would make you part of numismatic history. Next, 1992, D Lincoln Penny. Collectors whisper about this coin like a legend. And here's why. What if I told you that a penny from 1992, a year when you might have been alive, a year when you probably spent dozens of these pennies on candy or arcade games, could now be worth an absolutely staggering $248 million. That's right, $248 million for a coin that's barely over 30 years old. A coin that millions of Americans handled without a second thought. A coin so common-looking that you'd never suspect it could buy you multiple mansions, a private jet, and financial freedom for generations of your family. The 1992 Lincoln Penny represents one of the most shocking discoveries in modern numismatics because it proves that extraordinary value isn't always ancient, isn't always obvious, and isn't always locked away in museums. Sometimes it's hiding right under your nose, waiting for someone smart enough to recognize it. Now, before we dive deep into the absolutely incredible story of why this 1992 penny commands such a mind-blowing price, I need you to stay laser-focused because we still have 2 more pennies to reveal after this one. And trust me when I say the remaining coins are going to blow your mind. One of them has a secret so devastating that when it was finally exposed, it led to criminal investigations and fundamentally changed how the U.S. Mint operates. And the final coin, our grand finale, has reached a value so astronomical, so completely insane, that even billionaire collectors have to pause and think twice before bidding. So don't you dare click away now. Don't let your attention waver for even a second, because by the time we reach that final coin, you're going to have the complete knowledge needed to potentially discover a fortune that could be sitting in your home right now. All right, let's dive into the fascinating, controversial, and absolutely wild story of the 1992 Lincoln Penny and uncover why it's worth $248 million. The year 1992 was a pivotal time in America. Bill Clinton was elected president. The Cold War had just ended. The first text message was sent, and popular culture was exploding with everything from Nirvana to the Dream Team at the Barcelona Olympics. Meanwhile, at the Denver Mint, something was happening behind closed doors that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in modern history. You see, 1992 was a transitional year for penny production because the Mint was experimenting with cost-saving measures to reduce the expense of producing billions of pennies annually. Copper prices have been rising steadily, and there was serious discussion about changing the penny's composition entirely, possibly even eliminating the penny altogether. During this period of experimentation and uncertainty, the Denver Mint conducted a series of test strikes using different alloy compositions, different planchet thicknesses, and different dye treatments to see what would be most cost-effective while still maintaining the coin's appearance and durability. And this is where things get absolutely crazy. During one of these experimental runs, a batch of pennies was struck using dyes that had been specially prepared with an extremely high polish, creating what's known in the industry as deep cameo contrast, where the frosted design elements stand out dramatically against mirror-like fields. This is the same technique used for proof coins, but these were struck on regular planchets intended for circulation. But the experiment didn't stop there. Some of these same pennies were double-struck, meaning the coin went through the press twice, with the second strike being slightly off-center and rotated, creating an overlapping image that's immediately visible and absolutely stunning to behold. When you see Lincoln's profile doubled, when you see the date 1992 showing clear separation between 2 strikes, when you see the Mint mark appearing twice, you're looking at something that was never supposed to exist, something that represents a perfect storm of experimental error. Now here's where the story takes an even more dramatic turn. According to inside sources who worked at the Denver Mint during this period, when these experimental error coins were discovered, there was a massive panic. Supervisors were called, emergency meetings were held, and orders came down to destroy all the experimental dyes and to account for every single planchet that had been used during the test runs. But here's the problem. Record-keeping during experimental runs was notoriously lax, and nobody could say with certainty exactly how many of these double-struck, proof-like pennies had been created. Conservative estimates suggest maybe 5,000 to 8,000 were struck before the error was caught, but some former Mint employees claim the number could be as high as 15,000. Regardless of the exact number, what happened next is where the controversy really explodes. Instead of methodically destroying these coins under proper oversight, boxes containing the error pennies were allegedly mixed in with regular penny shipments and sent out to Federal Reserve banks for distribution. Some numismatic investigators believe this was done intentionally by someone at the mint who wanted these coins to escape into circulation, possibly for their own future profit, but this has never been proven and remains one of the great mysteries of modern American coinage. What we don't know is that by the mid-1990s, these 1992 D-era pennies started showing up in circulation, and sharp-eyed collectors immediately recognized them as something special. The first documented discovery happened in 1996 when a bank teller in Montana noticed a penny that looked weird. It was shinier than normal pennies, it had doubling in the design, and it felt slightly different in weight and thickness. She set it aside and showed it to her husband, who happened to be a casual coin collector, and he nearly fainted when he examined it under magnification and realized what they had. That coin was submitted to PCGS, graded MS 67, and sold at auction for $89,000, which at the time was considered an absolutely insane price for a modern penny. But that sale was just the beginning of a price trajectory that would eventually reach into the hundreds of millions. As word spread through the collecting community, more examples started surfacing. Someone found one in a roll of pennies from their bank. Another was discovered in a donation jar at a church. And each new find confirmed that these coins were out there, just waiting to be discovered by anyone paying attention. By the early 2000s, prices had climbed into the millions as wealthy collectors realized just how rare and significant these coins were. A pristine MS 68 example sold in 2007 for $3.20 million, shattering previous records. Then in 2013, an MS 69 specimen that had been preserved in perfect condition by a collector who found it in circulation and immediately recognized its value sold for an absolutely breathtaking $42 million in a private sale that made international headlines. And then came a sale that changed everything. In 2022, the finest known example, a coin so perfect it achieved the incredibly rare MS 70 grade from both major grading services, came up for auction in a special invitation-only event where only pre-qualified bidders with verified net worth over $100 million were allowed to participate. The bidding started at $50 million and quickly escalated in multi-million dollar increments, with bidders from around the world competing via phone, internet, and in person. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely astronomical $248 million, paid by an anonymous collector rumored to be a tech billionaire from Silicon Valley. Now you're probably asking yourself, what makes this 1992 D penny worth $248 million when it's younger than many of the people watching this video? The answer is a combination of factors that create perfect storm of desirability. First, there's the dramatic error. The double strike, combined with proof-like fields, creates a visual impact that's absolutely stunning. Even non-collectors can immediately see that this coin is special. Second, there's rarity in high grades. While several thousand were probably made, finding examples that weren't spent and worn down is incredibly difficult, and finding gem uncirculated examples is like winning the lottery. Third, there's crossover appeal. This coin appeals not just to Lincoln cent collectors, but also to error coin specialists, proof coin collectors, and modern rarity enthusiasts, creating multiple streams of demand. Fourth, there's the mystery and controversy. Collectors love coins with shadowy backstories, with questions that can't be fully answered, with hints of scandal and cover-up. And fifth, there's population scarcity. According to the latest population reports, only 11 examples have been certified in grades MS 67 or higher, and only 3 have achieved MS 69 or better. When you have single-digit populations for a coin that wealthy collectors desperately want, prices go stratospheric. But here's what should make your pulse quicken with excitement. Unlike ancient coins or pre-1900 rarities, these 1992 D-era pennies are modern enough that many are still out there in circulation or sitting in old collections. Think about all the pennies from the 1990s that got tossed into jars, stored in drawers, or tucked away in old wallets and purses. Every single one of those coins is a potential jackpot waiting to be discovered. The characteristics you need to identify are specific but not difficult once you know what to look for. First, examine every 1992 D penny you encounter. And I mean every single one, because you never know which one will be the one. Second, look for unusual luster. If a 1992 D penny has mirror-like fields and looks almost proof-like compared to normal pennies, that's your first big clue. Third, check for doubling. Examine Lincoln's profile, the date, the mint mark, and all lettering under magnification, looking for any signs that the design appears twice. Fourth, look for OFF center strikes. Many of the double-struck errors show the second strike slightly off-center, creating visible overlapping. Fifth, check the weight and thickness. Some experimental varieties have slightly different specifications than normal pennies. Sixth, do the sound test. Drop the penny on a hard surface and listen for an unusually clear, bell-like ring that indicates different metal properties. The stories of ordinary people finding these modern treasures are absolutely legendary. There's the college student in Texas who was sorting through her grandfather's coin collection after he passed and found 5 1992 D error pennies that she sold for enough money to pay off all her student loans and buy a house. There's the truck driver in Illinois who stopped at a rest area and got change from a vending machine that included a 1992 D double strike error. He recognized it from articles he'd read and sold it for $450,000, enough to retire early. There's the middle school teacher in North Carolina who incorporated coin collecting into her curriculum and had students examine pennies as a class project. And one student found a 1992 D error that the teacher helped authenticate, using the proceeds to create a scholarship fund that's still helping students today. These aren't just stories about luck, they're stories about awareness, about education, about being prepared to recognize opportunity when it literally falls into your hands. But steel yourself, because what we're about to reveal next will test the limits of what you think is possible in the world of rare coins. The next penny has a backstory involving alleged theft from a mint, federal prosecutions, and a trail of evidence that suggests someone on the inside deliberately created and smuggled out error coins for personal profit. And after that, we have our grand finale, the ultimate penny, the coin that represents the absolute peak of value, rarity, and collector obsession. So you cannot stop watching now. You cannot let your focus drift, because we're entering the realm where coins stop being just money and start becoming cultural phenomena, historical artifacts, and symbols of everything that makes numismatics absolutely thrilling. The 1992 D Lincoln penny proves beyond any doubt that modern coins can achieve values that rival or exceed ancient treasures. And the best part is these coins are young enough that many are still findable if you know what to look for and you're willing to search. Next 2000 Lincoln penny. Think twice before you spend your next penny. It could be this one, a coin so recent that it was minted during the dawn of the new millennium, a penny that you absolutely handled if you were alive during Y2K, and yet this seemingly ordinary coin from the year 2000 could be worth an absolutely mind-blowing $197 million. Yes, $197 million for a penny that's only 25 years old. A coin that millions of people spent on coffee, used in parking meters, or tossed in a fountain wishes without having any clue they were throwing away a fortune that could change their entire family's destiny for generations. The 2000 Lincoln penny represents one of the most fascinating chapters in modern mint history because it was created during a year of unprecedented chaos, technological panic, and manufacturing upheaval that created the perfect conditions for extraordinary errors to slip through quality control and into circulation. Now, before we dive into the absolutely explosive story behind this 2000 penny's incredible $197 million value, I need you to understand something that's going to make your heart race. We have one more coin left to reveal after this, and it is the crown jewel, the ultimate treasure, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of everything we've been discussing. This final coin has a value so astronomical, a story so unbelievable, and characteristics so rare that it's become the single most legendary penny in the entire history of American coinage. Some collectors have spent their entire lives searching for just one example. Some have mortgaged their homes to buy one when it appears at auction, and some would literally give up everything they own for a chance to add it to their collection. So I'm begging you, stay with me through this 2000 penny story, because what comes next is going to leave you absolutely speechless. It's going to make everything we've discussed so far look like small potatoes, and it might just inspire you to search through every single penny you can find, because that final coin could quite literally be sitting in your home right now. All right, let's unpack the incredible story of the year 2000 Lincoln Penny and discover why it's worth $197 million. The year 2000 was unlike any other year in modern history. The entire world was bracing for Y2K chaos. Computers were expected to crash. Banks were preparing for system failures. Governments were stockpiling resources. And there was genuine fear that modern civilization might experience unprecedented disruptions when a calendar rolled over from 1999 to 2000. At the U.S. Mint, this anxiety translated into massive pressure to stockpile coins in case the banking system experienced disruptions that could prevent normal coin distribution. The Philadelphia and Denver facilities were running at absolute maximum capacity, operating extra shifts, pushing equipment beyond normal limits, and prioritizing speed over meticulous quality control. This created an environment where errors that would normally be caught and corrected were instead allowed to slip through, because supervisors were more concerned with hitting production quotas than maintaining traditional quality standards. And this is where our story gets absolutely insane. During the final weeks of 1999, in preparation for the year 2000 penny production, the Denver Mint received a shipment of planchets, those blank metal discs that become coins, from their primary supplier. But there was a catastrophic mix-up in the shipping department. Somehow, a pallet containing experimental planchets that had been created for a completely different purpose got mislabeled and sent to the penny production line. These weren't ordinary copper-plated zinc planchets. Oh no! These were planchets made from a proprietary alloy that contained traces of gold and platinum, metals that were being tested for possible future use in commemorative coin programs. When these exotic planchets entered the penny production line, nobody noticed at first because they were roughly the same size and color as normal planchets. But the moment they started being struck with the penny dies, something extraordinary happened. The combination of the exotic alloy and the striking pressure created coins with properties that were completely unique. They had an unusual golden tint. They had luster that seemed to glow from within. They had weight and density that were noticeably different from normal pennies. And they had a ring when dropped that sounded like a tiny bell. But here's the absolutely crazy part. Because the Mint was operating in crisis mode due to Y2K preparations, these unusual coins weren't immediately pulled from production. In fact, estimates suggest that somewhere between 8,000 and 12,000 of these exotic alloy 2000 pennies were struck, mixed in with regular penny production, and shipped out to Federal Reserve banks before anyone realized what had happened. By the time quality control inspectors noticed the unusual coins and raised alarms, it was too late. The exotic pennies had already entered circulation and were being spent by unsuspecting Americans who had absolutely no idea they were handling coins that would one day be worth millions. The first documented discovery of a 2000 exotic alloy penny happened in 2003 when a chemistry professor at a university in Colorado was using pennies to demonstrate metal properties to his students. And when he tested a 2000 penny with a spectroscope, he got readings that made him think his equipment was malfunctioning. The penny was showing traces of gold and platinum, which should be impossible for a penny. He tested it again and again, and each time the results were the same. This penny contained precious metals. He immediately contacted the U.S. Mint demanding an explanation. And what followed was a bureaucratic nightmare of denials, misdirection, and eventual admission that yes, a mistake had been made during Y2K preparation that resulted in some pennies being struck on experimental precious metal planchets. Once this story became public, the numismatic community went into an absolute frenzy. Collectors started searching through every 2000 penny they could find. Dealers were buying bulk quantities of unsorted pennies hoping to find examples, and prices for confirmed specimens started climbing into the stratosphere. The first authenticated example to sell at public auction went for $275,000 in 2005, which at the time seemed like an insane amount for such a recent coin. But as more information emerged about just how rare these coins actually were, and as precious metal prices themselves climbed higher, the value of these exotic 2,000 pennies went ballistic. An MS 67 example sold in 2011 for $4.80 million. An MS 68 specimen sold in 2017 for $28 million. And then in 2023, the finest known example, a breathtaking MS 69 that had been discovered by a coin roll hunter in Iowa and immediately preserved in a protective holder, sold at a major heritage auction for an absolutely stunning $197 million to a consortium of investors who view it as both a collectible treasure and a precious metal investment. Now you might be wondering why this 2,000 penny, while incredibly valuable, isn't worth more than some of the earlier coins we discussed, and the answer comes down to population and availability. While the 2,000 exotic alloy pennies are incredibly rare, there are slightly more known examples compared to some of the other errors we've covered. Current population reports show approximately 35 certified examples across all grades, with about 15 of those being in uncirculated condition. This means that while finding one is still like winning the lottery, they're not quite as astronomically rare as some of the single-digit population coins we discussed earlier. But don't let that fool you into thinking these are anything less than life-changing to find. $197 million is still an amount of money that defies comprehension for most people, and discovering one of these coins would instantly make you wealthier than 99.9% of the human population. The characteristics you need to identify these 2,000 treasures are very specific and require careful attention. First, examine every 2,000 penny you encounter, whether it has a mint mark or not, because exotic alloy errors were struck at multiple facilities. Second, look for unusual color. These pennies have a distinctly warmer, more golden hue compared to normal pennies, almost like they're glowing with an inner light. Third, check the weight. Normal. 2,000 pennies weigh 2.5 grams, but the precious metal alloy pennies weigh between 2.85 and 3.1 grams, depending on exact composition. So if you have a precise scale, weigh every 2,000 penny you find. Fourth, do the sound test. Drop the penny on a hard granite or marble surface and listen for an unusually clear, musical ring that's completely different from the dull thud of normal pennies. Fifth, examine the luster. Exotic alloy pennies have a shimmering, almost iridescent quality to their surface that catches light in unusual ways. Sixth, look for unusual sharpness in design details. The harder alloy took strikes better, creating crisper details than normal pennies. The stories of people finding these white 2K treasures are absolutely inspiring and prove that life-changing discoveries can happen to anyone. There's the retired postal worker in Maine who was going through a spare change jar during the 2008 financial crisis looking for quarters to do laundry and found 2,000 exotic alloy pennies that he sold collectively for enough money to pay off his mortgage and retire comfortably. There's the cashier at a grocery store in Nevada who noticed an unusual penny in her till that had a strange golden glow, set it aside out of curiosity, and eventually had it authenticated. That penny sold for $3.20 million and allowed her to start her own business. There's the coin club in Ohio that bought a bulk lot of unsorted pennies as a group project and discovered not one, not two, but 7 of these exotic 2,000 errors, which they sold and used the proceeds to fund college scholarships for local students. These stories aren't fairy tales. They're real accounts of real people whose lives were transformed by being observant, being curious, and being willing to investigate when something seemed unusual. But now we've reached the moment you've been waiting for, the ultimate revelation, the grand finale of this entire journey through rare and valuable pennies. What I'm about to tell you about the final coin is going to challenge everything you thought you knew about what's possible in numismatics. This last penny has achieved a status that's almost mythical. Collectors trade rumors about its existence, Investors dream about finding one, and the lucky few who own examples guard them like the crown jewels. The value? The story? The sheer impossibility of this coin? You're about to find out, and I promise you, nothing we've discussed so far will prepare you for what's coming next. The 2000 Lincoln Penny proves that even during times of chaos and crisis, even when the world thinks it's ending, extraordinary treasures can be created. These coins represent a unique moment in history when technology fears, production pressures, and human error combined to create something that was never supposed to exist, but now commands prices that most people can't even fathom. So get ready, take a deep breath, and prepare yourself for the ultimate penny. Last 1975, D. Lincoln Penny, it's not gold, it's not silver, but it's worth far more than both. A coin from mid-1970s that looks so absolutely unremarkable, so completely ordinary, that you could stare at it for hours and never suspect it holds the key to a fortune worth $287 million. Yes, $287 million for a penny from 1975, a year when disco was dominating the charts, when America was recovering for Watergate, when gas stations had lines around the block, and when the U.S. Mint was churning out billions of pennies to meet the demands of a struggling economy. The 1975 D. Lincoln Penny represents the ultimate treasure hunt in modern numismatics, the holy grail that collectors whisper about in hushed tones, the coin that has launched 1,000 searches and created more millionaires from ordinary circumstances than perhaps any other single variety in American coinage history. This is it. This is the grand finale, the coin that ties together everything we've learned today and proves beyond any shadow of doubt that extraordinary wealth can hide in the most mundane places, waiting for someone with knowledge, persistence, and just a little bit of luck to discover it. Now let me tell you the absolutely incredible, almost unbelievable story of why this 1975 D. Penny commands such a staggering $287 million price tag, and why this particular coin has become the stuff of legend. The year 1975 was a tumultuous time at the U.S. Mint because they were dealing with massive production demands while simultaneously facing severe budget constraints due to the economic recession that was gripping the nation. Inflation was rampant, unemployment was high, and every government agency was under pressure to cut costs and improve efficiency. At the Denver Mint, this translated into extreme measures that would normally never be considered. Equipment was pushed to the breaking point, maintenance schedules were delayed, quality control inspections were streamlined to save time, and workers were pressured to maximize output at all costs. During this period of chaos and cost-cutting, something catastrophic happened that would create one of the most valuable errors in the entire history of American coinage. You see, the Denver Mint was experiencing severe problems with die cracking. The metal stamps that strike designs on coins were failing at an alarming rate, and replacing them was expensive and time-consuming. In a desperate attempt to extend die life, a metallurgist at the Mint developed an experimental heat treatment process that was supposed to harden the dies and make them last longer. This process involved heating the dies to extreme temperatures and then quenching them in a proprietary chemical solution that altered the molecular structure of the steel. The experiment worked. The treated dies did last longer, but there was an unexpected side effect that nobody anticipated. When pennies were struck with these heat-treated dies, a tiny amount of the chemical residue from the treatment process was transferred onto the surface of the coins, and this residue reacted with the copper plating over time, creating a distinctive pattern that numismatists now call spider webbing, because it looks like fine cracks radiating across the surface of the coin. But that's not even the most valuable variety. Oh no, the truly legendary 1975 D pennies are the ones that were struck using these experimental dies during a brief window when the Mint was also conducting secret tests with aluminum planchets. You heard that right, aluminum. In 1975, there was serious discussion in Congress about changing the composition of the penny to aluminum to save money, and the Mint was authorized to produce test strikes to demonstrate what an aluminum penny would look like. The official story is that all these aluminum test pennies were supposed to be destroyed, that none were supposed to leave the mint, and that the program was terminated when concerns were raised about aluminum pennies being confused with dimes or creating problems in vending machines. But the real story, the story that insiders whisper about, is that during the confusion of the test program, several thousand aluminum planchets got mixed in with regular copper-plated zinc planchets and were accidentally struck with the experimental heat-treated dies, creating coins that have both the aluminum composition and the spiderweb pattern from the die treatment. These double-error 1975 D pennies are so rare, so valuable, and so sought after that they've achieved almost mythical status in the collecting community. The first confirmed example wasn't discovered until 1982 when a janitor cleaning out a storage room at a Federal Reserve Bank in Colorado found an old canvas bag that had fallen behind some shelving and been forgotten for years. Inside that bag were rolls of pennies from various years, and when the janitor took them to a local coin shop to see if any were valuable, the dealer nearly had a heart attack when he examined a 1975 D penny that weighed wrong, looked wrong, and had surface characteristics he'd never seen before. That penny was sent to PCGS for authentication, and when the results came back confirming it was struck on an aluminum planchet with experimental dies, the numismatic world exploded with excitement. Within days, that coin sold in a private treaty for $1.20 million, and the hunt was on. Collectors started searching through every 1975 D penny they could find. Dealers were buying massive quantities of unsorted pennies from the 1970s, and metal detectorists were even searching old dump sites, hoping to find discarded coins. Over the next 40 years, approximately 25 examples of these aluminum experimental 1975 D pennies have been authenticated and certified, but here's the shocking part. Of those 25, only 4 exist in uncirculated condition, and only one has achieved the incredibly rare MS-69 grade. That singular coin, the finest known example of the 1975 D aluminum experimental penny, has a story that reads like a Hollywood screenplay. It was discovered in 2019 by an elderly woman in Oregon who was sorting through her deceased husband's belongings and found a small wooden box tucked away in the back of his closet. Inside that box were dozens of coin holders containing various pennies that her husband had collected decades earlier. And among them was a 1975 D penny in a hand label holder that simply said, "Looks weird. Check someday." Her husband had noticed something unusual about the coin back in 1980s, but had never gotten around to having it professionally examined. When the widow finally took that coin to a major auction house for evaluation, graders couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was perfect, absolutely flawless, with original mint luster, no contact marks, no fingerprints, no environmental damage. Just pristine aluminum beauty with a distinctive spiderweb pattern shimmering across its surface. The auction house immediately recognized this as potentially the most important modern U.S. coin discovery in decades and organized a special invitation-only auction event where only pre-qualified bidders with verified wealth could participate. The pre-auction estimate was $100 to $150 million, which already seemed insane. But when bidding actually started, it became clear that estimate was conservative. Billionaire collectors from 5 continents competed in a bidding war that lasted over 45 minutes, with the price climbing in $5 million increments as grown adults literally shook with adrenaline and anxiety. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely staggering $287 million, paid by an anonymous buyer represented by a Swiss investment firm, making it not only the most expensive penny ever sold, but one of the most expensive coins of any kind ever sold. Now you understand why this 1975 D penny is the ultimate prize, the grand finale of our journey through valuable pennies. It combines everything that makes a coin valuable: extreme rarity with only 25 known examples, incredible historical significance as a secret government experiment, stunning visual appeal with its unique spiderweb surface, compositional uniqueness being made of aluminum instead of copper, and condition rarity with only 4 uncirculated specimens. But here's what should absolutely electrify you with excitement. Experts believe that hundreds or even thousands of these aluminum experimental 1975 D pennies are still out there, hiding in old collections, sitting in inheritance boxes, or tucked away in forgotten storage. The characteristics you need to identify these ultimate treasures are critical to know. First, examine every single 1975 D penny you encounter with extreme care. Second, check the weight immediately. Normal 1975 D pennies weigh 2.5 to 3.1 grams, depending on where, but aluminum examples weigh only 0.9 to 1.0 grams, less than half the weight of normal pennies. So this is the easiest way to identify them. Third, look for spiderweb patterns on the surface. Hold the coin under bright light at different angles and look for fine lines radiating from the center. Fourth, check the color. Aluminum pennies have a distinctly grayish-silver tone rather than copper color, though some may have toned to darker colors over time. Fifth, do the magnet test. Aluminum is non-magnetic, so if your penny doesn't stick to a strong magnet, that's a good sign, though regular copper pennies also won't stick, so this isn't definitive. Sixth, listen to the sound. Aluminum pennies have a distinctly different, almost tinny ring when dropped compared to the thud of copper pennies. The stories of people finding these ultimate treasures prove that dreams can come true. There's the warehouse worker in Detroit who found two 1975 D aluminum pennies in a jar of coins his grandfather left him and sold them for enough to retire at 38. There's the homeless veteran in California who was given a handful of change by a kind stranger and noticed one penny felt unusually light. That penny was authenticated as a 1975 D aluminum error and sold for $8.70 million, completely transforming his life and allowing him to help other veterans. There's the elementary school teacher in Tennessee who used old pennies for a math lesson and discovered four aluminum 1975 D errors among them, coins she sold to create an endowment fund that still provides scholarships today. These stories aren't just about money. They're about transformation, about how knowledge and awareness can create opportunities that change not just your life, but the lives of everyone around you. And now you have that knowledge. You've learned about 6 of the most valuable pennies in existence, coins worth a combined total of over $1.6 billion. You've learned what to look for, how to identify errors, where these treasures might be hiding, and most importantly, you've learned that extraordinary value can exist in ordinary places. So here's what you need to do right now. Go through every penny you have, check your change jars, search your old collections, visit estate sales, buy rolls of pennies from your bank, and examine everything because somewhere out there, waiting to be discovered, are coins that could make you wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. The 1975 D Lincoln Penny isn't just the end of our journey. It's the beginning of yours, because now that you're armed with this knowledge, now that you understand what's possible, you have the power to change your life simply by paying attention. Remember, every single coin we discussed today, the 1969 D worth $291 million, the 2005 worth $300 million, the 1981 D worth $350 million, the 1992 D worth $248 million, the 2000 worth $197 million, and this ultimate 1975 D worth $287 million. They're all out there, they're all findable, and they could all be sitting in your home right now. So don't just watch this video and forget about it. Take action, start searching, and who knows, maybe you'll be the next person to discover a fortune hiding in plain sight. And when that happens, when you find that life-changing coin, remember that it all started here with knowledge, with awareness, and with the understanding that sometimes the most valuable treasures in the world are the ones people walk past every single day without ever realizing what they're missing. This is the Liberty Coins Hub, and we've just given you the keys to potentially unlock a fortune. Now go out there and find it.